And as you can tell, I mean, the engine's mostly complete. It's got a new radiator, new upper and lower radiator hoses, and it looks like the battery cables have been replaced. This is a new battery I just bought for it. I don't feel like crawling under it with snow and shit on the ground, so when I crawled under it in August, I noticed the speedometer cable has been disconnected. This is kind of an idea of the interiors, bags of stuff that I had purchased for it, and I'm kind of assuming that this little cushion here is for this big gaping hole here in the driver's seat. It is fully loaded. It does have power windows, power locks, does not have power windows. Obviously power brakes, power steering, has air conditioning. And as you can tell, the interior is in shambles. Transfer case shifter looks like it's been obviously taken out, and this is the shifter boot for it. Same thing with the transmission shifter, even though it's still on here, it's just loosely on here. But with the speedometer cable being disconnected, and that shows a little over 9,000 miles on the clock, which I can tell is probably inaccurate. Miles on this thing are unknown, but you turn the ignition on, everything fires up. This truck before a couple of days ago actually hadn't ran in 3 years, so we'll give it a fire up. Almost. It is a standard transmission. It's a ZFS 542 transmission, 4-wheel drive. It's got Warren premiums on the hubs. It does need some suspension work. There's a busted ball joint on the passenger side, but the engine runs. Tell it, I'm not sure if you can see that in the camera, but it does run a little rough. Better than my brother's truck. Actually, he's got an 89 F250, almost identical to this one. This one runs a lot better. When we first got it to my house a couple days ago, we tried to fire it up. Tried to fire it up in August and it didn't work. Apparently, whoever had parked it had taken this fuse out for the fuel pump, put that in, and it fired right up. But before we fired it up, the Schrader valve right here on the fuel rail was leaking. Big old puddle of fuel right there in the intake valley. For a truck that's been sitting for about 3 years without being ran, fired right up after tightening that Schrader valve. It's got decent throttle response. And this is old. This is probably 3 or 4 year old gas that's in this. So, which I'm surprised. That could also be why it's running a bit rough. I'm not sure if you can see that in the camera. And as you can tell, it does not have an exhaust system, or much of one, let's put it that way. It does not have a muffler, does not have a tailpipe, last I remember. Yeah, it just comes right off the cat. Much like my Bronco right now, my wife's Bronco. This is a project that my brother and I are going to start restoring so I can put it back on the road. Mechanically, it just needs the emissions hooked up, new exhaust, shocks all around, and just front end suspension work, ball joints, steering linkage, stuff like that. Really all it needs. hesitation on startup is because it is cold right now. It is below 30 degrees. I think last I looked it was 28. Plus the battery I got is only a 650 cold cranking amp battery, and I think minimum this thing requires at least a 750 or an 850, but I wasn't about to spend over $100 on a battery for a truck I'm not going to be driving for the time being. So this is just get it started and running enough where I can move it from back here to my garage over there, which is actually right there. He's got a little man door. That's actually my garage. It's a small one-car garage. I'll give you guys a shop tour later. And my sister-in-law's dog. Okay, you know, it does need like new light lenses right here. There's a big ass dent right here. Obviously some major rust damage. This bumper seems to be in fairly decent shape. It does, as you can tell, needs a tailgate. And it does need new tires all around. The parking brake don't work. That's another thing I need to address with this. As you can tell, the parking brake mechanism, kick panels, the hood latch, all non-existent. All's going to needs to come out. So needs to be replaced, all of that. I do believe this is what that fuse is connected to. This looks like to be the same kind of wire right here. And that's probably just a ground for the fuel system, I'm assuming. I don't know why it's there. I'm not even sure if that's a factory thing for this truck or not. I just know that plugging in that fuse and then tracing it through the firewall, this appears to be where it comes out. So it's got to be on the ground side of the circuit. As you can tell, interior wise, the seats shit. I showed you the dash. Now behind the seat, for those of you who want to know, there ain't nothing back there, and fairly clean. Looks like all the panels and the carpets there, these metal panels there and above right here, be taken out, probably cleaned up, painted, and put back in. As for this seat though, it definitely needs reupholstered or replaced. That is a definite. Parking brake cable I don't even think is hooked up under the truck. Again, I really don't want to get under there and snow on the ground. But push it down and it just comes back up, and that doesn't even move. The parking brake release, that doesn't even move. That whole thing is going to have to come out. Looked in the fuse box and a lot of things there, but the turn signal flasher, as you can tell, there's no circular turn signal flasher there to have working turn signals. I don't know exactly where the four-way flasher switch is on this truck. That's definitely something I would like to know, because I know on my wife's 1994 Bronco, the four-way flashers do work without the actual turn signal flasher in there. No radio. I want to let this warm up to operating temperature. There's the hazard switch. And well, it looks like the four ways are working. Check them out back here. I'm not seeing any flashing coming from those. But the fronts are working, so there might be some rear end electrical work that I'm going to have to do. I don't have any reverse lights, and it doesn't appear that I have a license plate light, which is required to pass the safety inspection here in the state of Utah. That is a requirement. I could turn my lights on and we'll turn the flashers off and turn my lights on and see if I have a working license plate light, which doesn't look like I do. I'm probably going to have to replace that as well. But it does look like there's some wiring work that needs to be done back here to get lights functioning. The coolant temperature gauge on the dash doesn't work, and I gotta figure out what's going on there, because I would like to have a functioning gauge for that and know how hot my engine's running. But I'm gonna let it warm up to operating temperature and see if the heater works. My brother's truck, being just a year older, says his heater's having some problems. That's mainly because of the blower motor. I want to check its function in this one, see if that's something that I'm going to actually have to go through and replace or not. So yeah, this is Project Resurrection. I want to resurrect this old derelict truck and eventually turn it into something that looks nice. I want to put a lift kit, bigger tires, eventually pull motor and trans and go through it, and go through the shitty looking interior, and, you know, basically something custom, one off with it. These are the best type of vehicles to do those type of projects with. If you want to just build something custom, one off and unique, you don't need to have something rare like a, you know, an old muscle car or something of that nature. You know, so you can use any old derelict vehicle and be able to do that with. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this channel, is to show people that you don't need some classic vehicle to be able to build something unique and one-off. You can actually do it. You can actually do it with any vehicle out there, whether it be new, old. It can be something as derelict as this that people would think, why do something with this rusty piece of shit?